the ongoing climate activism protests that are going on in London. They could, we're told, last several days. Well, indeed, the people behind them, the Extinction Rebellion group, say they're going to stay on the streets until they get their demands to the government met. Well, given that their demands include things like ending all carbon emissions, bringing them down to zero by 2025, and as that is virtually impossible unless we all go back to the dark ages and indeed human beings stop existing, it's not going to happen. In which case, are we now stuck with protests across many of our landmarks? Waterloo Bridge closed this morning in central London. Many other landmarks, Marble Arch, Parliament Square, Oxford Circus and Piccadilly Circus, blocked yesterday by a total of, over across the city, thousands of protesters. We were told it was peaceful. We were told it was good-hearted. Well, it didn't look like that on the news when people started getting arrested, or indeed when they started smashing the windows of the Shell building and daubing graffiti on the building. Well, one of the people who was at that demonstration yesterday was Amelia Womack. She's deputy leader of the Green Party and supports the action by Extinction Rebellion. Good morning, Amelia.
Good morning, Julia.
Didn't look like a peaceful protest to me.
Well, the sections that I was at was peaceful. I spoke to the police and what they said was that they saw people there who really believed in the actions that they were taking.
Oh, well, in that case, if they really... Amelia, if someone really believes in it, then that's fine. They can do whatever they want.
I think that what's important here is the fact that the creation of this movement has been because the government hasn't been moving fast enough on this issue. And it's created as a direct result of the fact that we need to take action now to ensure that we mitigate against the worst effects of climate change. The UN have told us that we have just 11 years to make sure we take positive action.
It's been saying that for quite a long time. In fact, probably for more than 11 years. Can I just start? You're saying the government hasn't...
it's been counting down. That's the point. Is when I first started my degree in environmental biology, then we were told that we had over 20 years, and now that is counting down. That means that we've got a very short amount of time.
Amelia, if you look at if you look at the warnings over the last 30 years, those warnings have been pretty regularly. Those dates where the world is going to reach the catastrophic level, and we're going to have terrible things happening to us. We've crossed a lot of those dates over the years, and nothing seems to have happened. Now, you say the government hasn't been moving fast enough, and that's why people are demanding action. I've got two things to say. That one is our government is actually very much ahead of the curve in terms of taking action to cut emissions. London in particular, of all the places where we've got this carbon emission zone that's hitting millions of diesel drivers. But also, even if the government isn't moving fast enough, that's an argument for instance, you, as Deputy Leader of the Green Party, to be campaigning on this issue, to talk about it. We talk of nothing else in the media every day other than Brexit, environmentalism and climate change. This is about persuading politicians. It's about convincing and persuading ordinary voters to take this issue more seriously. It's not about a small group of people demanding action, is it? That's not how democracy works.
I mean, protest is a key part of our democracy. We've got a proud tradition of protest in our country, whether that's from the Chartists or the suffragettes, who we were just celebrating last year. We need to be making sure, you say the government is a leader in this. Fundamentally, we're not taking action fast enough.
So even though we're at the front of the curve on this, we need to be even further ahead. Why don't these people go and demonstrate in China or India, where a lot of this pollution's actually being caused?
India and China are taking action, and that's the point, is that... So, I mean, India, for example, has made commitments to stop plastic waste. China is...
Okay, good luck with that.
Working in China. Well, I mean, they're taking that bold action, and that's what's fundamental right now. But I also think that what's important is the tone of this debate is changing, and that is thanks to NGOs and politicians and campaigners and people who are speaking out about these issues. And it is the fact that it's been put on the agenda by people who are taking action, whether that's in their organisations or on their streets.
The tone of the debate has changed. I mean, people are watching programmes like, Blue Planet with David Attenborough, and they say, well, hold on a minute, I like using plastic, but I don't want plastic to end up in the sea. I can see what's happening. Fair enough. Let's have, reusable cups. Let's have, stop selling plastic bags, and let's have paper straws. And those are things where the public is really an awful lot of people are very much on board. Persuading people, convincing people with the arguments and the facts is one thing. Blocking bridges, blocking arterial routes, sitting down and refusing to allow people to pass. That's not a protest. That is not peaceful protest, because if I wanted to drive my car and they refused to move, that definitely wouldn't be peaceful. This is about bullying. This is about a small group of people making demands of a democratic government rather than going about the democratic process. Why do you, as a member of a democratic party, the Green Party, which has done very well in polls in the past, has been very influential on other political parties, why do you think that's justifiable?
Can I just go back to your point on Blue Planet? Because I think what's important is we might reduce the amount of plastic in our oceans, but if we heat them up so much that all the species die, then which
they aren't going to. Amelia, that's not going to happen. You know that's not going to happen. I know that's not going to happen. Everyone listening knows that's not going to happen. And you just make yourself sound stupid when you say it.
Well,
all of the animals living in the ocean are not going to die. Full stop.
So anybody who's been looking at the science understands that at the moment we're seeing fish stock collapses. We're even
because of overfishing, not because of anything else.
And it's because of all of these different aspects. And even when it comes to things like our food security, it's a myriad of issues that come together that create that risk. And it's our government.
Come back to the protest issue. Come back to the anti-democratic, the demanding, we're going to block your streets, we're going to stop you getting to work, stop buses crossing London. By the way, a nice eco-friendly mode of travel. We're going to stop that because we're angry about this topic. Why do you think that is part of the democratic process?
I mean, the buses are still moving. They've been diverted and they're still going. But
the bus routes, most of the central London bus routes have been completely disrupted. Ordinary people, many on low incomes, trying to get to and from work in an eco-friendly way, unable to do so because of these protests. Why do you think this is part of the democratic process?
So part of our democratic protest is to be able to petition, to go...
That's not petition, that's bullying, that's different.
Hang on, I was building up to non-violent direct action, because when people don't listen, I mean, we've had demonstrations on the streets about climate change for decades. We've had people petitioning for decades. And when people don't listen... Who's
not listening? We talk about environmentalism and climate change non-stop. We've got emission zone. There are loads of new laws that have been brought in, new taxes, subsidies of eco-friendly energy. How on earth could you possibly claim with a straight face that the government isn't listening? They may not be going as far as you want, but that's not an argument for bullying ordinary people trying to go about their daily lives, is it?
So we are introducing new coal mines. We're introducing fracking. We're continuing with airport expansion. These are things that damage our environment.
Tell me the last time an airport was expanded. Tell me the last new run. When was the last time a new runway was built in this country?
I mean,
When was the last new runway built in this country, Amelia? Was it in the last year, the last decade, the last 50 years?
As you well know, Julia, we're currently debating a Heathrow expansion.
Yes, we're having a democratic debate.
But fundamentally, it's part of a government agenda that is continued, that hasn't stopped that debate. But I want to say that we have been giving people the blueprint of the action that we need to take, of investment in public transport and investment in renewables. The blueprint is there in issues like a Green New Deal that talks about home insulation. The blueprint is there of how we make sure we adapt to make sure that we meet the demands.
But Amelia, I'm not talking about whether or not the policies are a good idea or not is a different matter from the methods being used. You're a deputy leader of a democratic party, the Green Party. You stand for election, you put your arguments in the media, you put your arguments on the doorstep and in leaflets, and you persuade people of your arguments. If your arguments are good and they are strong enough, people will listen to them and people will vote for you, or they will insist that the other political parties listen to you, or they'll take their vote away from them. Why do you think direct action, you call it peaceful, didn't look very peaceful to me, doesn't look very peaceful to me when 113 people get arrested because they're refusing to move to allow people to go about their daily business? Why do you defend undemocratic, non-peaceful protest when we have a democracy, we have plenty of ways for people to persuade people through the ballot box?
Fundamentally, as I said before, it's part of our democracy. But what you have is ordinary people who feel like they need to be heard because of the challenge that we face.
They need to be heard. What about people's need to get to work and get paid, to put food on the table for their children? What about their need?
But people are still able to move around London, but this is making sure that we are keeping climate change on the agenda.
Can I clarify, Amelia? Because this is something you and they feel very strongly about, pretty much anything's justified, isn't it? Because you feel strongly about it.
I mean, it's about taking action. It's about having your voice heard. We don't all have the opportunity. As you said, I have the opportunity to. We work to get more elected politicians that declare.
Yeah, you should persuade more people, shouldn't you? Do you think these sort of events, this sort of protests, do you think they do persuade people?
Hang on, let me finish my point, Julia, because we've got more Greens elected across the country to declare climate emergencies in councils. We've been working to lobby our Parliament to declare a climate emergency. We've been using those tools, but for many people, they don't have those same tools to hand. What they do to have to hand, as I said, is a proud tradition in this country, is the act of protest, is the act of going out and saying, these are what needs to happen. And it does change belief. Although it didn't stop the Iraq War demonstrations mean that we know when people talk about it, they know that something wrong happened. It changed public opinion. And because people put their bodies where their beliefs were, they stood up and they said, this is what I stand for. And I think what's vitally important when action isn't happening fast enough, when we do have such a clear opportunity to make change happen, that people should feel empowered in our country that is so proud.
They should be empowered if they feel strongly enough to stop other people going about their daily business. Can I just ask you again, just finally, one final question. One of the key demands, the key 3 demands of this organisation yesterday, which you back, is that we reduce carbon emissions to 0%. You know that means no public transport as well as no diesel cars or taxis, no trains. That would mean effectively no electricity, no central heating, etc., etc. Is that what you want at the Green Party? Should we go back to the Stone Age?
That isn't Green Party policy as such. But
no, I didn't ask you what Green Party policy was. Do you support? You're very supportive, and you think these people they believe very strongly. It's really important what they're doing. One of their key demands, which they say they will not stop their action until they get met by the government, is that by 2025, in 6 years' time, we have 0 carbon emissions. You know, because you're the expert, remember, you're the one who did this as a degree, that 0% carbon emissions would mean effectively us going back to the Stone Age. Is that what the Green Party wants? Yes or no?
Well, Julia.
No, it's a yes or a no, Amelia.
This isn't about going back to the Stone Age.
0% carbon emissions is going back to the Stone Age.
I mean, this is about investment in renewables. It's about investment in warm homes, in insulation. And we're part of a civilization that
Would that take us back to 0% emissions?
Bold ambition.
Would that take... You're the expert, Amelia. You've got the degree. Would that take us back to 0% carbon emissions? All of the things you just said, would that take us back to 0% carbon emissions?
I mean, every single
No, it wouldn't, would it?
Where we change...
It wouldn't, would it?
I mean,
it wouldn't, would it? Amelia, I'm asked you 2 really simple questions.
So I've worked with businesses to reduce their carbon emissions.
Point, is there?
And when you challenge them to 0, they're more likely to meet it.
So you don't actually want 0 emissions, because you know that 0 emissions, which is the key aim of this organisation, is us living in the Stone Age.
You're twisting my words.
I'm not twisting your words. I'm following the logic of your argument.
But I don't believe that you believe it's going back to the Stone Age, because we've seen changes in technology. I mean, the way that our technology has changed over even the last 10 years, the idea that we have the internet in the palms of our hands was something that was unimaginable just a decade before. We have seen changes in technology that have fundamentally changed our culture.
And by the way, those changes of technology didn't come about by a load of people sitting on a bridge stopping other people get to work. They came about because of the great wonders of human ingenuity. And by the way, that thing you hate, capitalism,